Growing up near Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Zoo was always a staple when I was a kid. And one of the favorite parts of the Milwaukee Zoo was always the fish house. Not that grand as far as compared to like the Shed Aquarium or anything like that, but to a kid, this was very cool. And I always loved the center exhibit, how you would walk up to it and there was like windows and the fish would swim always around, usually in one direction, and you could walk up to the window and squish your face and imagine it was, like endless water, and you were underwater. Always loved the lakes in the area, and always thought it would be cool to set up like a living room inside of the Milwaukee Zoo, like have just an enormous fish tank aquarium, so it felt like you were just sitting underwater. And the king of the exhibit has always been, personally for me, the octopus. They always, at least now, they have the Red Pacific. I don't remember if they had it when I was a kid. This is some years ago. But now, as a parent taking my kids there, it's kind of the highlight of the trip is always to see their faces now with the same kind of glow. I always wanted to do a built-in in my house with something similar, like a sub portal, something where it was more water than, like, you had a smaller view space than there was fish tank. Most people want the entire fish tank, but I wanted that to try to recreate a little bit on my budget scale, the same feeling that you would get when you go to the zoo. And maybe do salt water and put in an octopus. That was the goal. Now, to do something on my scale with a limited budget in my limited space, I needed something maybe the most volume that I could manage with the smallest footprint. And so for me, that was 2 foot by 2 foot by 30. It was a tower aquarium by Seaport, about 74 gallons. It was the biggest I could fit in my space and the only spot in the house that I could potentially do something like this. For various reasons. One, I don't want water all over my hardwood floors on the main level, but also the weight. This thing is going to weigh probably 500-600 pounds when it's complete. Now, to do something with an octopus, there was only 3 species that I could fit in something like that. One of them probably was a little bit oversized, the vulgaris. So really that nailed it down to either the Bimac or the Caribbean Octopus. So to try to keep the system as simple as possible, we're going to just try to do whichever one is available at the time of completion. And from what I understand, they're actually pretty hardy in terms of what they can withstand as far as the water conditions. But they're not the easiest to contain, which makes them like an expert level animal to contain and keep happy. Now, being in the trades, it makes it a little bit easier, but I am awesome at walls, plaster, concrete, that sort of thing. Not so great at framing. But I was able to build a box using simple 2x4s. Not the best carpenter in the world, but that's okay. I can fix it with everything else. And I wanted a tough concrete top, so we did a 2-inch thick slab. I do not recommend doing what I do, which is working flip-flops, but I'm also chasing kids around the yard while I'm doing this and including them as I can. Let's kind of blow through the steps here. I do have experience in doing some concrete counters. So for the octopus cap on the pedestal, we decided to do a 2-inch for weight. I left a little hole in the center because I wasn't sure if I was going to have a light shining up from the center through the octopus maze. More on that later. So if you're wondering why it looks kind of like a donut. Made it 2 inches thick. This is, I think I did like 1 pound of black. Formed it up, caulked the edges, poured it, reinforced it with rebar. Trolled the backs super nice. And then broke it out. I do not recommend doing this barefoot, but I was kind of in a pinch just to see how it was going to go. I wasn't even sure I was going to do it, but ended up completely ripping it out. Do not recommend doing this, but this is middle of the night when I had time. Any parents out there will understand. So once that was fully cured, sanded it down. And since this isn't a concrete counter, I used a tile sealer. It's called a bulletproof sealer. use it on floors and stuff, but not a food safe sealer, so I don't recommend using it. It ended up not looking the greatest, but I wasn't really concerned about looks. This was going to be only visible around the edge. So and if I didn't have a fish tank on this, it's going to end up in the dumpster. So I made it also easily reversible. So just a razor and a couple screws, and I can pull the whole thing out. Once that was done, I had the tank positioned, framed it in, and like I said, I wanted it to be a smaller viewpoint than you would see. I wanted a little bit of depth, but I didn't want flush, but I didn't want 4 inch or 3.5 inches deep or whatever that would have ended up being. But I also wanted a radius on the edges. Remember, think subportal. So I decided to do a flat 2x4. I cut radius pieces with a bandsaw in the corners to give it that look. Also, keeping the edges in has the benefit of hiding the filter, the heater, and my wave generator and all that sort of thing, because I didn't want any of that to be visible when you walked in. I wanted you to only see water. So by bringing it in, I tested it out with the filters and everything I had so that you have to really peek around to even see it. And it kept everything on the view side, on the opposite side of the wall. So you could still see it when you walk around from the other angles. The sides are naturally mirrored, and then the only side that I have to worry about would be the back. More on that later. So then once it was wrapped in drywall, it was time to set the piece. Do that with just cheap thin set. All this is doing is keeping it so that it has support underneath all the way around with a 2-inch thick slab and then a 2x4 base. This thing is pretty tough. Make sure it's level. I did a little test with the light to see how it would look with the water in it, radius edge, and I figured it was passable by my standards for my basement octopus tank / sub portal. Think of how like an airline window would look with the rounded edges. Like I said, 2 feet by 30 inches, but shrunk in maybe 3 inches, 2 inches on either side. So acceptable by my standards, but wanted to put a bigger tank in, but I also wanted the depth. I didn't want a shallow tank. I think they're like 18 inches deep. I wanted 2 feet deep at least. As with the rest of my house, I used a tearaway bead. My house is pretty like a mid-century modern. I either like big trim or like no trim. And so we did a tearaway bead with an 1/8 inch reveal on the underside. And then there's no trim around any of my doors or windows in my house. They're either drywall return with a concrete sill and painted. And then there's no millwork, but it is a lot of finishing. But remember, that's what I do for a living, so not a big deal for me. Also helps cut down on the costs as far as trim. Trim adds up, like especially if you want big trim. Tearaway bead is cheap. Now remember, the whole point of this is to do it with kids. So every step of the way they're involved. I let them draw on the walls. Had them gave them little chores, helped them with the cleanup. My daughter helped with sealing the counters with chemicals. I got her all in PPE and had her doing all that. They got to put the gravel in. I had them help with the paint. They helped fill the tank. Also wanted to create a maze underneath the gravel. So for that, we decided to go with a 2-inch PVC pipe, figuring a octopus at 24 inches can still squeeze through it to hunt and then release crabs and have viewports on the ends of the maze to still have visibility. So here's my octopus tank map maze. So what I'm thinking is this side would be the view side, so you won't be able to view anything from this side. But I want access to the top of the gravel here and here. Reason being is because I want to put wave makers to shoot water down these 2 points, which should be pretty much out of sight from the view side, which is going to be shortened to prevent seeing these things, or at least seeing them too much. The reason why I want water flow under here is so that there's no dead water in the maze, so that if the octopus is down there, he can still get fresh water. So the only hole I really want to have visible is in the center, so this would be a 5-way.
and across here, 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 and here. 4-way, and then a 3-way here, a 4-way here, but with a hole pointing this direction, and also 4-way here, 3-way, no, 4-way here, 4-way here. I want also views there. So the reason I was thinking of doing it this way is because then you have line of sight through here, line of sight through here, through here, through here, here. So no matter where the octopus goes in here, you should be able to see. The idea being you drop the crabs in here, and it becomes like the labyrinth. Crabs run around in the maze, octopus goes in there, eats the crabs, and we can see it in any one of these directions.
To cycle it and get it prepped. That done, it was just time to find one and wait for it to arrive. Let the tank cycle and do its thing and get prepped. And that's basically the build. I'll go more into the lid. The lid was a bit of a challenge. I'll post a video later on that. We'll see if it holds and go from there. Let me know what you guys think of the build, and I'll talk to you next time.